girl born in the middle of two brothers. Growing up as the only girl, Toni was a tomboy, but also the perfect Southern belle. Her upbringing as the only girl in a household of boys made her independent and assertive. She could hold her own in male-dominated environments, but also exuded femininity and charm. After graduating high school, Toni pursued higher education, enrolling in college and medical school. She was a dedicated student who excelled in her studies. Toni's hard work paid off as she graduated top of her class. Throughout her life, Toni focused on her career goals as an ophthalmologist. She became a successful and respected field doctor known for her expertise and compassion. Despite her professional achievements, Toni still yearned for love and companionship. Toni married at a young age, but found that their relationship lacked chemistry and compatibility. The divorce was a difficult adjustment for Toni, as she struggled with disappointment and loneliness, using it as a distraction from the pain she felt. Over time, Toni realized it was time to give love another chance. At 30, she decided to dip her toes back into the dating pool. However, her previous experience had left her guarded and cautious. Despite her initial resistance, Toni eventually found herself opening up to the possibility of love. She allowed herself to meet new people and explore potential relationships. However, it was still not easy for her to let go of the past and embrace the idea of finding true love. Like many others, Toni believed that online dating held the key to finding her soulmate. With a strong belief in the importance of faith in her life, Toni decided to embark on a quest to find a partner who shared her beliefs. As a result, she turned to a Christian dating site. Throughout her online dating journey, Toni went on several dates with men who captured her interest. However, she found herself struggling to find that special someone who truly connected with her on a deeper level. Despite the potential connections, Toni remained hopeful that one day she would meet the love of her life. When all hope seemed lost, Toni encountered Harold Henthorne, a charming and handsome man who piqued her interest. Harold's dating profile painted a picture of a confident and successful man living in Colorado. According to his profile, he worked as a consultant at a nonprofit organization. What attracted Toni to Harold the most was his genuine and heartfelt desire to find a second chance at love. He disclosed to Toni that he was a widower, having lost his first wife, Lynn, in a car accident. Harold shared with Toni that he had waited for a significant amount of time to find his happily ever after. As their online conversations continued, Harold decided to travel to Jackson, Mississippi to meet Toni in person. Upon being introduced to Toni's friends, Harold effortlessly won them over with his charismatic personality and genuine warmth. Toni's loved ones quickly realized Harold was the perfect match for their beloved friend. They noticed his outgoing nature and energy complemented Toni's reserved and quiet demeanor. From the moment she met Harold, she knew she had found her soulmate. Their relationship moved quickly, and by Valentine's Day 2000, Harold proposed to Toni with a stunning ring. Of course, Toni said yes, thrilled to have the opportunity to embark on the next chapter of her life with her Prince Charming. Less than a year after they first met, on September 30th, 2000, Toni and Harold exchanged vows in a grand church wedding in Jackson, Mississippi. Following the wedding, Toni and Harold relocated to Colorado, where Harold lived. Toni quickly established herself as an esteemed ophthalmologist, treating her patients like family. She had remarkable bedside manner, ensuring every patient felt heard, understood, and cared for. Her compassion and dedication to her craft made her an exceptional doctor. Toni's life revolved around her career as a doctor and her relationship with Harold. Together they built a beautiful home and supported each other. As time passed, Toni and Harold had a daughter, Haley, who was the light of their lives. Years passed, and Toni Henthorne and her husband Harold built a beautiful life together. Just 2 weeks before Toni and Harold's anniversary, Harold reached out to the office manager at her ophthalmology practice. The manager was eager to help. Harold requested that the office manager prepare a surprise for his wife, saying he wanted to take her to the Rocky Mountain National Park. Harold planned to take Toni away for the weekend and celebrate their 12th wedding anniversary. Knowing how much Toni loved their job and patients, the office manager kept Toni's schedule clear. On September 28, 2012, Harold arrived at Toni's office. The manager brought Toni into an exam room, thinking she would treat a regular patient. However, when Toni stepped inside, she was shocked to see her husband Harold waiting for her. Harold told Toni that he had a surprise for her. They were going away for the weekend. He assured Toni that he had already made arrangements to have a babysitter for their young daughter Haley, and packed her bag. Toni, always trusting and unsuspecting, happily agreed to the unexpected trip. As the couple embarked on their journey, Harold informed Toni that they would spend the first night at the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park, Colorado, the inspiration for Stephen King's novel The Shining. Upon arrival at the Stanley, Harold and Toni had an early dinner and retired to their room. Harold had meticulously mapped out trails in the park for them to explore the following day. On September 29, 2012, The couple decided to embark on a trek through the picturesque Rocky Mountain National Park. The day started peacefully as Tony and Harold set out on their hike. They were excited about the breathtaking views and the prospect of a beautiful day in nature. America's national parks are known for their breathtaking landscapes and awe-inspiring beauty. However, as beautiful as these parks may be, they also hold a hidden danger. According to a study conducted by Backpacker magazine, a staggering 243 people die in national parks each year. This statistic highlights the inherent risks that come with exploring the wilderness. In Rocky Mountains National Park, where the Henthornes were planning their hike, the leading cause of death was falling. As the hours passed, the couple ventured deep into the rocky terrain. A bit before 7 p.m., Harold made a shocking call to 911. In a panicked voice, he explained to the dispatchers that Tony had fallen off the edge of a cliff and was in critical condition. The dispatcher immediately dispatched a park ranger, a trained EMT, to the scene. However, due to the treacherous terrain, the ranger needed to walk to the spot where Harold was. Harold waited on the phone with the dispatcher, his voice filled with urgency. He begged the dispatcher to send a helicopter to rescue his wife. Due to the high altitude and terrain, the dispatcher explained that a helicopter could not reach where he was. The dispatcher tried to reassure Harold that help was on the way, but Harold's desperation and fear were palpable. After a while, Harold hung up the phone on the dispatcher. He said that he feared that his cell phone battery would die, leaving him without a way to connect to the emergency services. As the ranger ventured through the park, the sun began to set, casting an eerie glow over the landscape. In order to make it easier for the ranger to locate him, Harold decided to start a fire. Approximately an hour after the initial call, Harold contacted the emergency services again. This time, the dispatcher attempted to guide Harold through CPR, hoping to save Tony's life. However, Harold insisted on hanging up with the dispatcher, stating that he needed to hang up the line in order to keep it free. As the ranger continued his search, the dispatcher called once more and requested Harold use his whistle so the ranger could find him. Harold blew the whistle, signaling to the ranger that he was nearby. Unfortunately, it was too late by the time the ranger and emergency services arrived. It was over 2 hours after Harold first reported Tony's fall, and Tony had already passed away. All deaths in national parks are thoroughly investigated. This case was no exception. Harold recounted to the ranger the details of the hike that led to Tony's tragic death. He stated that at 1:45 p.m., he and Tony embarked on the Deer Mountain Trail, where they decided to take a selfie. However, the trail was crowded with numerous hikers, prompting them to venture further into the woods. Harold explained that they reached their destination around 3:30 p.m. and had lunch on the mountain. During this time, he captured a photo of Tony. However, the ridge where they had stopped for lunch was too noisy for the couple to enjoy a peaceful meal. As a result, they decided to continue down the mountain in search of a secluded spot. Harold mentioned that Tony had spotted wild turkeys and wanted to get closer for a photo opportunity. Unfortunately, she fell 128 feet down the mountain while trying to capture the birds. When Harold returned home after Tony's passing, he was met with an outpouring of support from his family and friends. His daughter Haley, who was deeply affected by her mother's loss, also received a lot of love and care from everyone around her. However, amidst this outpouring of sympathy, there were whispers and rumors surrounding Tony's sudden death. Tony's friends found it peculiar that she died only 1 year after she almost lost her life in another incident. While Tony was cleaning underneath her deck 1 year earlier, Harold accidentally hit a loose beam, causing it to crash onto Tony's head. She was rushed to the hospital, but fortunately, she survived the injury. However, she was left with bruises and injuries that took some time to heal. In light of these circumstances, Tony's friends couldn't help but wonder if foul play was involved. They couldn't help but question if the accident a year earlier was accidental, or if there was more to the story. Suspicions heightened when, on the day of the funeral service, Harold seemed more interested in watching a football game rather than mourning the loss of his wife with their loved ones. The FBI became actively involved in the investigation into Tony's death. Agents with the FBI conducted interviews with the ranger who first arrived at the scene on the day Tony died. According to the ranger, there was no indication that Harold had attempted to perform CPR on his dying wife. Further investigation by the FBI uncovered additional evidence suggesting that Harold may have been involved in Tony's death. The investigators discovered that before Tony died, Harold's cell phone pinged in the area where she fell 9 times. These pings raised suspicion that the phone calls may have been part of a scouting mission to locate the ideal location to kill his wife. It wasn't long before the FBI received a call informing them that Tony was not Harold's first wife to die. This information raised suspicions about Harold's involvement in the death of his previous wife and Tony. Lynn and Harold were married in September 1982 and lived in Colorado. On May 6, 1995, a little after 9 p.m., in the countryside of Colorado, a woman and her family were driving on Highway 67 when they saw a man in the street flagging down cars for help. It was Harold Henthorne. Harold seemed panicky and quickly approached the woman's vehicle and told them he needed their assistance. He explained that his wife, Lynn, was stuck underneath their car and was in need of help. Harold claimed that while he and his wife were fixing a flat tire, a jack gave way, trapping Lynn beneath the car. The woman and her family sprang into action, working together to lift the car off Lynn. As they did so, they noticed that her lips were blue and she was not breathing. It was a chilling sight made worse by the chilly weather. Lynn, who was only wearing a tank top and jeans, was exposed to the elements and in desperate need of warmth. Recognizing the gravity of the situation, the woman and her family took an immediate action. They began piling their coats on Lynn, hoping to keep her body temperature elevated and comfort her. Since it was the mid-1990s, there would have been no cell phones on the scene. After driving 2 miles, the woman who stopped to help Harold managed to find a house with a phone. She hurriedly made a call, alerting emergency services to the dire situation. The dispatcher assured her that help was on the way, but time was of the essence. When the police officers and paramedics arrived at the scene, they administered a shot of epinephrine in an attempt to restart Lynn's heart. Fortunately, their efforts were successful, and Lynn's heart began to beat once again. She was then transported to a nearby hospital for further medical attention. Unfortunately, despite the initial progress, Lynn passed away at the age of 37. As Lynn was being treated, one of the EMTs attempted to gather information from Harold. However, Harold appeared evasive in his answers and continually moved away from the medic, hindering their efforts to gain the necessary information. The medic noticed that Harold's behavior seemed strange, as he did not feel urgent or desperate for his wife to receive assistance. From observing Harold's actions, the medic came to the conclusion that Harold's demeanor did not seem consistent with someone deeply concerned about his wife's well-being. It seemed as if Harold was reluctant to allow any assistance to reach her. This behavior raised suspicions and made the medic question Harold's intentions. When the medics were able to restart Lynn's heart, Harold acted shocked, maybe even disappointed. Despite freezing outside, Harold did not remove his jacket and place it on his injured wife. This behavior puzzled the medic, as they expected him to prioritize his wife's comfort. However, the onlookers at the scene seemed more interested in helping Lynn than her husband. This discrepancy furthered the medic's confusion. An autopsy was conducted on Lynn's body, and it was discovered that she had died from asphyxiation. This finding prompted an investigation into her untimely death. However, a few days later, the medical examiner ruled her death accidental and closed the case. At the time, no one had any reason to suspect that Lynn's death was not as straightforward as it seemed. The case appeared closed, and it seemed no foul play was involved. Detectives investigating Tony's death in 2012 hired a private investigator to look into Lynn's death several years earlier. The private investigator's investigation revealed that Harold provided various accounts regarding the cause of Lynn's entrapment under the car. To some people, Harold stated that Lynn was searching for a lug nut at the time of the accident. However, to others, he claimed she went under the car to retrieve a flashlight she had accidentally dropped. Furthermore, Harold's accounts differed regarding where they were headed when the incident occurred. In some cases, he claimed they were about to head out for dinner, while in others, he stated that they had already eaten and were on their way home. Over the years, the private investigator discovered that Harold had also told different stories regarding Lynn's death. Harold told one person that the trunk of the car fell on Lynn's neck, breaking it and killing her, and told people at his church his first wife died of cancer. One of the detectives approached one of Harold's first wife's, Lynn's best friend, with a proposition. They asked if she would be willing to wear a wire and approach Harold to obtain incriminating information. Initially, the friend was hesitant to agree to the request, as she believed Harold was innocent. They had been friends for many years, and she trusted his character. However, the friend decided to take the matter to her pastor to seek guidance. The pastor advised her that if Harold was truly innocent, her involvement could prove it. This realization weighed heavily on the friend's mind, and she decided to reconsider her initial refusal. After careful consideration, the friend eventually agreed to meet with Harold and wear a wire during their conversation. However, during the meeting, a technical glitch occurred in the wiring system, causing disruptions in the recording. The friend realized that she needed to take action discreetly. She discreetly excused herself from the conversation and made her way to the bathroom, where an officer was waiting to assist her. The friend observed that Harold never explicitly denied killing his first wife, Lynn, or his second wife, Tony. However, Harold never admitted to the killings either. Despite the lack of a confession, the friend did not believe that Harold was capable of murder. Over time, however, the friend's perspective began to change. She began to suspect that neither of Harold's wives had died accidentally. As the investigation into Tony's death progressed, The FBI learned that Harold had presented himself as a fundraiser for nonprofit organizations. He had claimed that he regularly went on business trips, insisting that these trips were integral to his work. However, upon closer inspection, the agents discovered none of these claims were true. They were unable to locate any tax returns, pay stubs, or any other evidence that Harold had a job since 1995. Further investigation revealed that Harold's weekly business trips were spent at a local Panera Bread outlet. The agents discovered his location through surveillance footage, which showed him surfing the internet during his supposed work trips. This revelation cast doubt on Harold's credibility and raised suspicion about his activities. On November 6, 2014, 2 years after the death of Tony in Rocky Mountain National Park, Harold was arrested and charged with Tony's murder. Harold pleaded not guilty to the charges against him. Tony's family sought custody of Haley, Tony's daughter, but Harold, who was in jail at the time, refused to allow it. As a result, Haley was placed in the care of her godparents in Colorado for the time being. 10 months after Harold was arrested, he went on trial in 2015 for the murder of his second wife, Tony. Despite the absence of forensic evidence linking him to her death, the prosecution presented various pieces of evidence to strengthen their case. Firstly, the prosecution presented evidence that Harold had taken out several life insurance policies on Tony. This, they argued, suggested premeditation on his part, as he had planned to kill his wife and profit from her death. Furthermore, the prosecution presented evidence of pings in the area several weeks prior to Tony's death. These pings suggested that Harold was actively seeking a location where he could carry out his sinister plan without attracting attention. Additionally, the prosecution presented a map found in Harold's car, marked with a giant X on the spot where Tony fell from the cliff. This, they claimed, further solidified their theory that Harold had selected this location in order to carry out his nefarious plan. However, the most compelling evidence presented by the prosecution was the death of Harold's first wife, Lynn, and the suspicions surrounding it. The similarities between Lynn's death and Tony's, according to prosecution, were striking. The jury believed that Harold exhibited a pattern of behavior that led them to convict him. After a 10-day trial, the jury retired for deliberation. The jury ultimately returned with a guilty verdict, finding Harold guilty of murdering his second wife, Tony. They found that there was a pattern of similarities between the deaths of Lynn and Tony, which led them to believe that Harold was responsible. As a result, Harold was sentenced to life in prison, where he will reside for the rest of his natural life. Although Harold was never formally charged with the murder of his first wife, Lynn, it is widely accepted that he is also responsible for her death. In December 2015, Tony's oldest brother was granted custody of her and Harold's daughter, Haley. In 2023, Harold Henthorne appealed his conviction, but it was ultimately dismissed. Additionally, he filed a motion for post-conviction relief, alleging ineffective assistance by his defense attorney. Harold contended that his attorney's performance during the trial failed to meet constitutional standards. He argued that his defense attorney did not prepare an adequate defense for him. However, Harold's request for relief was also denied. Despite his claim of inadequate representation, the court determined that his defense attorney had provided an adequate defense, meeting the constitutional standards required for a fair trial. Harold's story is a stark reminder of the dangers posed by people whom society label as charming or grooming. His ability to charm and deceive those around him highlights the importance of being vigilant and suspicious when dating or entering into a relationship with someone. This case serves as a cautionary tale for individuals who find themselves in similar situations. It encourages them to exercise caution and seek support from trusted individuals. Harold Henthorne's chilling story reminds us of the consequences of falling victim to manipulation and the destructive power of greed.